Huh?
Hello, YouTube. Today I just want to make a quick video. This is actually a video requested by one of you in the comments. A video explaining to people how to make yourselves faster. I think a lot of people like watching me farm in this game, watching me do my pet versus no pets and all that stuff, all are like realizing that a big factor in how much F you make in this game is just how fast you move. So what exactly can I do in this game to make myself go faster? Well, if you're playing an attack build, you actually have access to one of the easiest ways to go fast, and that is attack mobility skills. So there is attack mobility skills for like any type of weapon you could possibly use. It is going to be one of these four: leap attack, sprawl strike, shadow raid, or blink arrow. It's going to be one of the four you can choose from. Although something that a lot of people have been like picking up lately has been ground shaker, and doing a 6-link ground shaker to have ground shaker, wrathful vault. Just from testimonies from people who've done this and have tried out, I haven't personally tried out yet, although I do plan on doing it soon, is that it feels really fast and it lets you like hop over walls and things, which is why it feels really good. But with all that being said, all of these mobility tags or skills have the exact same line on them. 75% of bonuses to movement speed is also applied to additional attack speed of the skill, up to 60% additional attack speed. That means that if you have a lot of attack speed and you have a fair amount of movement speed, just like 100% movement speed, your mobility skills are going to just go new. Absolutely insanely fast. But how do you scale these? Well, the biggest one is going to just be attack speed scaling. The exact same thing that you would do with like any attack-based skills. Like you're gonna have gear attack speed, you're gonna have a weapon with a lot of base attack speed. And then on top of that, you also want to have some movement speed to get additional attack speed. And then you just want to get different sources of additional attack speed to get to a point where like your mobility skills are like casting like 15 times a second. Because when you're casting 15 times a second, guess what? You're fucking flying. So one thing that you could consider to do to get faster is going to Blade Runner and picking up this point, because a lot of builds are going to be in the Blade Runner tree and can just pick this up for free. 35% of the bonuses to movement speed is also applied to the CDR of mobility skills. 70% of bonuses to movement speed is also applied to attack and cast speed of mobility skills. Again, I already mentioned here that you do want to have some movement speed on your melee attackers. You don't want to just be a fucking turtle. You want to get to like 100% at least. To get to the 60% additional attack speed. This just makes it that on top of getting a bunch of, additional attack speed, you're also just getting a bunch of flat attack speed. Very nice. You can also pick it up as a slate mode. Then you can utilize supports that give you attack speed, such as periodic burst, quick mobility, and recklessness. All of these are options that are just going to give you some attack speed for your support skill. And any form of additional attack speed you have in your build, such as, additional attack speed when you crit from Goddess of Hunting, or additional attack speed when you regain from Druid, are just going to be really good. And of course, you can get some generic movement speed scaling. But for that, we're going to have to go over to the spell section. So if you're a spell build, you don't really have access to those attack mobility skills. Now, technically, you can use them. I mean, my build can use leap attack, for example. But the problem with your build versus them is that they have a weapon which has a base attack speed rate, and they have a gear attack speed modifier on their weapon. So just by default, they have like a 2x multiplier, if not more, over you. And then on top of that, their builds also scale attack speed. These are attack skills, so they do need attack speed scaling. So generally, it's going to be a lot more efficient for you as a spellcaster to instead invest into a mobility skill and going for cooldown reduction. So for mobility skills, we have Speed Phantom, Frigid Transmission, Shadow Dash, and Blink. Now, I will give a special mention to Blink, because Blink actually has a line on it that states 24% additional cooldown recovery speed for the skill. So very early on, Shadow Dash is pretty tempting to take because it has like an extra charge. But later on, you do actually want to swap over to Blink, because of its additional cooldown reduction, because you just want to try and get your blink to be as low of a cooldown as humanly possible. With that being said, what are our options for supports? Well, you can use Magic Dash. Magic Dash gives +1 charge to your skill, which is not necessarily like making your mobility faster, but not having to use it on cooldown the second it comes up is quite nice. And having extra charge just means you can quickly just spam like 2 blinks in a row. Periodic Burst, as said before, it gives you some attack and cast speed for mobility skills. This doesn't actually make you go faster. It just is a way to scale offense from your mobility skill, which is pretty nice to mention. You can obviously pick up cooldown reduction to get 22.5% CDR. Some tech that not a lot of people know about is actually using an activation medium. For example, activation medium multi-strike here, mine that I have gives me 19% additional cooldown recovery speed. This additional cooldown recovery speed will work on your mobility skill. Now, I don't have multi-strike in my build. I don't do multi-striking. I'm only equipping this because of this additional CDR. I don't really care about anything else about the skill. I don't want I don't want to activation media my blink and just teleport all over the place without any control. I want to choose where I'm teleporting to. And of course, quick mobility is really good. It gives you CDR for speed for the sports skill. And then the exact same thing as with the attack skills. You can pick up the Slate mod. So generally, you're not really going to be in Blade Runner if you're playing a spellcaster, but you can still get one copy of this where you turn your movement speed into CDR. Because if you have like 300% movement speed, well, that's 100. That's almost 100. No, that is 105% CDR for your blink. That's really good. This has a massive effect. If you have a decent amount of mobility, this is a really good option. But maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you don't want to, have these mobility skills and invest in all the CDR and invest in this mobility and stuff. One option that might be a good fit for you is to just pick up Blade Dancer Steps. Blade Dancer Steps are very, very, very powerful. They have this line, when you use a mobility skill, it consumes an agility blessing and resets your mobility skill, and it has an interval of 0.6 seconds. Now, 0.6 seconds is a pretty slow interval. That means at most you can use, your mobility skill every 0.6 seconds, which is not necessarily ideal. But of course, you can get it corroded to instead be a 0.3 interval, which is way more ideal. And on top of all of that, you can also make yourself a Blade Dancer Steps Vorax. Because obviously the boot slot is a pretty decent slot. There's a lot of really good boots items in the game. And maybe your build is like really strong and you can afford to drop your Vorax to instead just equip the legendary and then equip a Vorax Blade Dancer Steps. But again, getting a corroded Vorax with this mod corroded is kind of difficult. And if you just buy the item directly with the mod, then it's a much faster interval of 0.3 seconds. But if you do that, how are you maintaining agility blessings? Well, one option is Kismet Civet, I don't know how to pronounce it, where you can gain a stack of agility blessings every 0.5 seconds when moving, which this is going to sustain the 0.6 just fine. You can get agility blessings on critical strike. So, assuming your build has crit in it, you can very easily maintain agility blessings just with crits. And if you don't want to get it as a mod on a site, you can also go into the Ranger tree and then pick it up as the Legend Medium talent in the Ranger tree. And lastly, you can obviously pick up Perception. Now, this is a bit more expensive because this is a main talent, but in the Goddess of Hunting, at the level 12 main talent, you can pick up Perception, which gives you agility blessings on hit. So there's quite a few options that you have to generate agility blessings to maintain your Blade Dancer Steps. But then lastly, anyone who's watched me play this game obviously knows I don't use my mobility skill and I'm still flying around in the maps, going super fast. What sources of movement speed do you have? Well, my first and foremost, what I'm going to say is go to Torch Codex, torchcodex.com, and just type in movement speed. This is going to show you every source of movement speed in the game, and you're going to have this long list that you can go through and figure everything out. But if you don't want to do that, I have gone ahead and compiled the sources that I most commonly use and I most often look at to try and fit into my build. So first up, you have Euro memories. Buying an orange Euro memory with movement speed on it is not very expensive. Like, this is a movement speed base with movement speed for 700 FE. Now, that is quite expensive. But if you just, you can buy, like, any random memory of progress, memory of origin, or memory of whatever the other one's called for very, very cheap. Memory of discipline. especially the orange ones. Even like the red ones you can get for fairly cheap. But, you know, it's not that expensive to just go like, oh, 15 FE, damage percent, movement speed. You know, it's not that bad. And this is a very, very good way to quickly get yourself to like 60+% movement speed. You can obviously do Kismet. So what I did actually in my build is I have a ×3 Star Trail setup with Microfade movement speed, and each one of these is rolled to 3%. So in my build, because I have 3 of these, I have 10 of these, all at 3% with 3 Star Trails. This equals 70% movement speed. Pretty good, pretty decent. Very expensive, but pretty decent. You can also do a Prism setup. Any Prism can roll this movement speed mod on it. But if you really want to, you can even make a Phantasmagoria with 12.5% movement speed on it. And if you put this Prism in a place like Warlock, for example, you know, you can get 7 legendary. You can get 6 legendary talents in the Warlock tree pretty easily. And each one of these is going to give you 12.5% movement speed. Or you can even go into the Marksman tree, and if you put it here, you can get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 times 12.5%. That is pretty fucking fast. That's an 100% movement speed just from the Marksman tree. Again, pretty expensive investments, but that's just the name of the game. Movement speed is expensive to get. Another option you have is obviously using elixirs. So Scorpion Distillate might not be, you know, the best option for everyone, for obvious reasons. It's very expensive, and you need a lot of elixir effect to actually get it to this 150%. Which, by the way, is not possible to get to 150%. Like, my build has like 110 to 120 or something only. But Swiftness Dew is actually way easier. You can run Swiftness Dew in your build, in like pretty much any build, and getting your Swiftness Dew capped out at 50% is really easy. And as long as you're mapping and killing things in your maps, this is going to be at 50% for most of the map. Another good option is Pack Spirits. We obviously all know Preserve of Eternity, which is a very insane pet, giving 68% movement speed. But even if you ignore Preserve of Eternity, there's a lot of options. Like, let's take Elixir Fires, for example. This pet gives you 10% movement speed while an Elixir is active. And on top of that, it also has an additional an extra 8%. So this pet is giving me 18% movement speed. If I use Backup Power, this gives me 30% movement speed. If I were to use Abyssal King Soul and level him up to level 5, he would give me 20% movement speed. There's like all sorts of pets that just here and there give you like 10-20% movement speed, and it might not seem like a lot, but it does add up. Obviously, you can use the Swiftness Aura. Swiftness Aura with like Aura Amplification. It's just an easy 20 to 30% movement speed. And if you're playing an Aura Stacker, this can even go up to like 60, 70, 80, 100% movement speed very quickly, depending on how much you're investing into your build. And then you have gear. So on your gear, you're going to see a lot of movement speed mods. Your boots can roll as an advanced suffix, movement speed. If you use a Vorax Ring as an advanced suffix, you can roll movement speed because Vorax Rings share the same like pool as boots. And a lot of legendary items are just going to have movement speed on them. A very good example of that is the Lone Walker boots come with 50% movement speed. And there's obviously way cheaper examples than Lone Walker boots that just have a lot of movement speed on them, because boots is generally associated with movement speed. If you have a lot of movement speed in your build, like a fair amount of movement speed, you should pick up Hasten. Hasten is 8% additional movement speed. In my build, Hasten is giving me 50% movement speed. That is really, really good. The more movement speed you have, the more value you get from Hasten. And not only does it give you like a ton of movement speed, it gives you mobility CDR, it gives you attack speed, it gives you cast speed. It's really good. It is super worth it to pick up Hasten. And then you also have options like Fervor. If you're doing any sort of Fervor stacking, you can pick up these 1% movement speed per 10 Fervor rating mods. And you can like parry them, you can like copy them, get multiple of them. This is going to add up very quickly. Same thing with Blur. If you're doing a Blur build, you can have access to all sorts of movement speed scaling with Blur. And just in general, just look at your talent tree. It's going to be very often when you look at your talent tree, you're going to find nodes like these that just give you movement speed. And tiny amounts of movement speeds add up to make the full build. You know, there's no one source that just gives you 200% movement speed. Generally, in a build, it is just a bunch of tiny things adding up together to come together to a build of like 300, 400, 500% movement speed. Something I didn't actually talk about here with Kismets is there's also quite a few options for like Kismets for movement speed. One Kismet in particular that's really interesting is Shackles. So if you're playing a Demolisher skill, you can actually use this deal Kismet Shackles that gives you 45% movement speed when consuming a Demolisher charge. That's really good. That's just really good. Like, not a lot of people playing Demolisher skills, so it felt very specific, but if you're playing it, that's pretty fucking awesome. But anyway, I hope this short video just going over a bit of like options that you have for mobility in this game helps. It is a struggle. I mean, this game, fucking, these developers hate movement speed. They don't like you going fast, so you really do need to shelve out top bucks, or you need to use tech like blade dancers or attack speed scaling in order to like make your character not feel like a turtle. Which, it sucks, but generally, like, once you reach a point where your build is able to like one-shot things, it is worth it to invest into this extra mobility, because it really quickly adds up to the amount of FE per hour you're making. And again, like, build your character for mapping, you can always swap to a bossing setup later. But you first need to farm the FE to do that swap. Anyway, YouTube, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys had a lovely, lovely day further. And I'll see you all again next time. Bye-bye, YouTube. Bye-bye.